The skies darkened with unnatural haste as the harbinger sailed deeper into the heart of the airborne currents. What had begun as an ominous gathering of clouds soon spiraled into a tempest unlike any the crew had witnessed. Captain Rourke stood at the helm, his eyes scanning the roiling heavens, every muscle taut with anticipation. The air grew thick, heavy with a scent that was neither sea nor sky, a subtle hint of decay and cold that unsettled even the most hardened sailors. "Brace yourselves." Rourke's voice cut through the growing roar of wind, sharp as a whip crack. The crew scrambled, their movements practiced yet frantic. The sails strained against the howling gale, and the wooden frame of the harbinger groaned in protest as the ship pitched wildly. Mira, the ship's engineer, darted between the engine room and the main deck, her soot-streaked hands steady despite the chaos. Sparks flew from the machinery as she fought to maintain the ship's power, the rhythmic pounding of the engines juxtaposed against the erratic, eerie crackle of unnatural lightning overhead. Felix, the navigator, clung to the rigging, his pale face ghostly in the intermittent flashes of light. His eyes darted anxiously across the shifting currents, searching for a safe passage that seemed to vanish with every gust. The storm's fury was not solely natural. Shapes began to form within the swirling shadows, spectral figures that flickered like fragmented memories. The mysterious passenger, Alaric, stood near the bow, his dark cloak whipping about him. His face remained obscured beneath his hood, but his presence exuded a calm that contrasted sharply with the mounting dread around him. He murmured words lost to the wind, incantations perhaps, as the ghostly wraiths closed in. Suddenly, the first wraith descended, a flickering apparition with hollow eyes that seemed to pierce the very soul. It reached out with ethereal fingers, brushing the rigging and sending a chill that cut deeper than the biting wind. The crew gasped and shrank away, but Rourke met the creature's gaze without faltering. "Hold the line," he commanded, drawing his cutlass with a steady hand. The crew rallied, brandishing weapons imbued with charms and steel alike, striking at the intangible foes that swirled like smoke around them. Each blow met resistance, as if the very air resisted their efforts, but the wraiths recoiled, shrieking in voices like the echoes of drowned souls. Below deck, Myra's hands worked feverishly to stabilize the engines. The machinery trembled, threatening to fail under the strain of the storm. Her breath came in ragged gasps, soot and sweat mingling on her brow. Sparks erupted, and with a cry, she slammed a wrench onto a valve, coaxing the engines back to life. The harbinger lurched violently as a gust tore through the sails, nearly capsizing the ship. Rourke steadied himself, eyes burning with resolve. "Steady. We fight for every inch of this sky." Felix shouted coordinates, guiding the crew through the shifting currents as the wraiths pressed their assault. The air was thick with the scent of ozone and salt. The sound a cacophony of creaking wood, howling wind, and spectral whispers that seemed to seep into the very marrow of the living. Hours passed in a blur of relentless struggle. The storm showed no mercy, and the wraiths seemed inexhaustible, their mournful cries echoing the doomed fate foretold by the ghost Helm. Yet the crew held fast, united in defiance against the encroaching darkness. As dawn threatened the horizon, the storm began to abate, the spectral figures dissolving like mist under the waking sun. The harbinger, battered but unbroken, floated amidst the dissipating clouds. Captain Rourke surveyed his weary crew, pride and exhaustion etched into every face. "We've survived the storm," he said, voice low but fierce. "But this is no ordinary tempest. The curse grows stronger. We must be ready for what lies ahead." The crew exchanged solemn nods, the weight of their ordeal settling upon them like a second skin. The ghost Helm's shadow stretched long across the skies, and the journey was far from over. Yet, amid the wreckage and whispers, a fragile hope flickered. Together, they would face the gathering storms, both seen and unseen, to deliver the Helm and seek the redemption that had long eluded them. But as the Harbinger pressed onward, a chilling question lingered. What other shadows did the cursed voyage yet conceal? And with that thought hanging heavy in the dawn-lit air, the ship sailed forward into the unknown. The Harbinger drifted down through a fine veil of mist that clung to the skies like a secret, settling gently against the ragged shore of the Isle of Forgotten Souls. The island emerged from the haze slowly, as if reluctant to reveal its ancient, mournful presence. Jagged cliffs, framed by gnarled, twisted trees, stretched into the sky, their branches clawing at the clouds like skeletal hands. The air was thick with a damp chill, and a heavy silence hung over the place, broken only by the faint, sorrowful rustle of leaves and the distant, mournful call of unseen birds. Captain Rourke stood at the prow of the Harbinger, his gaze fixed on the shore. A hard knot of tension gripped his chest. This island was whispered about in the darkest corners of the submerged world's taverns, a place where the souls of the lost lingered, unable to find peace. A place where the dead whispered secrets to the living, and madness was a constant companion. Why here? Maeve's voice sliced through the silence, sharp and uncertain as she stepped beside him, clutching a coil of rope. Her eyes scanned the shoreline with suspicion, wary of the island's reputation and the curse they carried. "We need supplies," Rourke replied, voice low but edged with resolve, "and answers. If the Helm's curse is as old as the legends say, this island might hold the key." Silas appeared behind them, his pale face drawn tight. "The currents here are treacherous. The ghosts are said to guide ships to their doom, or worse, drag them beneath the waves." He fingered the compass pendant at his throat nervously. Ira emerged from the shadows of the deckhouse, her silver hair catching the muted light. "The souls here are restless because of what they carry, burdens, regrets, unfinished business. We must tread carefully." Her voice was barely more than a whisper, but it carried an otherworldly weight. The crew disembarked with cautious steps, the wet sand cold beneath their boots. The island around them seemed alive with whispers, voices just beyond hearing, brushing at their minds like a cold wind. The ruins of an old settlement stretched before them, crumbling stone walls and shattered wooden beams, half swallowed by creeping vines and moss. As they moved deeper into the island's heart, shadows flickered at the edge of their vision. Forms coalesced out of the mist, figures translucent and shimmering, faces twisted in sorrow and rage. The apparitions drifted silently among the ruins, their presence a heavy weight on the soul. Rourke's breath caught as a figure stepped forward, a spectral man in the faded uniform of the Seabreaker's crew, eyes hollow but accusing. The vision was a cruel reminder of the disaster that had stripped Rourke of his honor. Images of the Seabreaker's final moments played in his mind, the screaming wind, the shattered masts, the desperate cries of men lost to the haunted sea. "Captain," the ghost's voice was a hollow echo, filled with pain and reproach. Rourke's fists clenched, muscles tight with guilt. He had tried to save them all and failed. Now, here on this cursed isle, the past was not done with him. Maeve's sharp cry pulled him from his reverie. In the ship's hold, she grappled with a shadowy apparition, the cold air crackling with unseen energy. The ghost hissed accusations of betrayal and cowardice, dredging up Maeve's own fears, her mistakes that had nearly doomed the Harbinger on more than one occasion. "Get away," Maeve shouted, her voice shaking but fierce. She slammed a heavy wrench into the apparition, and it dissolved into a swirl of mist, leaving behind a lingering chill. Silas, too, was not spared. Haunted by his own failures as a navigator, he stumbled under the weight of spectral visions that threatened to lead the ship astray once more. Only Ira's calm presence and whispered incantations steadied him, weaving a fragile shield against the island's dark influence. Hours passed in a haze of terror and revelation. The crew's resolve was tested again and again, each apparition a mirror reflecting their deepest fears and regrets. The island seemed to feed on their torment, the ghost helms cursed, tightening its grip with every step. As the first light of dawn broke over the island, the oppressive darkness began to lift. The apparitions faded back into the mists, leaving the crew battered but unbroken. They gathered in the Harbinger's cabin, the silence heavy but different, a silence filled with hard-won understanding. Rourke looked around at his crew, their faces pale but determined. We've faced what this island had to show us. The curse isn't just about death or doom. It's about what we carry inside. Our fears, our guilt, our failures. If we want to survive, we have to carry that burden together. Maeve nodded, wiping cold sweat from her brow. We're more than ghosts. We're still alive, and we're not done yet. Outside, the morning sun pierced the mist, casting golden light over the haunted island. Yet even as hope stirred, an uneasy truth lingered in the air. The curse was far from broken, and the Isle of Forgotten Souls had marked them all. The journey ahead promised greater dangers, but for now, the Harbinger's crew had survived the island's spectral trial. Their bond was forged anew in the shadow of the Forgotten Souls. But the question remained, how long could they hold onto their sanity and each other before the Ghost Helm's curse consumed them entirely? And as the island faded behind them, swallowed once again by mist and memory, a whisper followed on the wind, a warning, or perhaps a promise, that the ghosts were never truly gone. The deck of the Harbinger was slick with the fine mist that drifted from the haunted sea below, the faint luminescence of submerged islands casting ghostly shadows on the clouds above. Ilara Ven stood hunched over the navigation table, her fingers tracing the delicate lines of aerial currents and island chains that spread like veins across the brittle parchment. The flickering lantern light danced across her pale face, revealing the tight set of her jaw and the anxious flicker in her sharp blue eyes. Around her, the ship hummed with the low creaks and groans of aged timber adjusting to the restless skies. The cursed ghost helm, secured beneath tarps in the captain's quarters, seemed to breathe with a life of its own, its malevolent aura creeping through every plank and rope of the Harbinger. Ilara's mind was a tempest. Memories of past failures gnawed at her resolve. Years ago, a miscalculation of the aerial currents had led to the crash of a skyship she once navigated, a tragedy that had cost lives and haunted her ever since. That secret failure, hidden beneath layers of silence and regret, now threatened to surface with every uncertain reading she gave. Captain Rourke approached quietly, his boots muffled on the wooden deck. His keen green eyes studied the charts, then flicked to Ilaros's strained expression. "The currents don't match your calculations," he said, voice low but edged with concern. "We're drifting further away from the course. What's wrong?" Ilara swallowed hard, the weight of the helm's curse pressing down on her like a suffocating fog. I don't know, Captain. The readings are off. It's as if the winds themselves are shifting without warning." Rourke's gaze sharpened, or as if someone is steering us astray. The accusation hung in the air, thick and dangerous. Ilara's heart pounded. Was the curse manipulating her mind, or was her past about to betray her in the worst way? She clenched her fists, fighting against the tide of doubt that threatened to pull her under. In the engine room below, Mira Talbot wiped grease from her hands, the rhythmic pounding of the ship's engines a harsh counterpoint to the growing unease above. Her dark eyes glinted with suspicion. She had heard whispers of Illyra's past and sensed the tension festering among the crew. Yet, her loyalty to the mission and to Rourke kept her focused, determined to keep the Harbinger flying through whatever storm they faced. Above deck, Joran Sable lingered in the shadows, his pale face unreadable beneath the hood of his cloak. He watched the unfolding drama with quiet calculation, the cursed Helm's whispers seeming to echo only for him. His motives remained veiled, but his presence was an unsettling reminder that not all aboard the Harbinger were bound by the same purpose or the same fate. As the hours stretched on, the Harbinger's path curved unpredictably through the skies, the aerial currents twisting like serpents. Illyra's confidence faltered, and with every misstep, the crew's unease grew. Murmurs of the Helm's dark influence spread like wildfire, the fragile trust holding the crew together threatening to shatter. Rourke found Illyra alone on the upper deck, the cold wind tugging at her hair and cloak. "Tell me the truth," he urged softly. "What are you hiding?" Tears stung her eyes as she finally confessed, voice trembling. "I caused a crash once years ago. I thought I'd buried it, but the Helm, it's dredging up my fears, twisting my mind. I'm not sure I can guide us through this." Rourke's expression softened, the weight of his own failures mirrored in hers. "We all carry ghosts, Illyra, but the strength to face them, that's what makes a captain a crew. We'll find a way through this, together." Their resolve renewed, the crew worked through the night, battling both the shifting currents and the invisible chains of the curse. The Harbinger's course slowly righted, but the shadow of doubt lingered, promising that the navigator's burden was far from over. As dawn broke, painting the sky with hues of amber and rose, the Harbinger sailed onward, the cursed Helm's silent watch, a reminder that their journey was as much a battle against themselves as it was against the haunted skies. The ghost Helm lay at the center of the ship's dimly lit cabin, resting on a pedestal carved from driftwood and sea glass. Its surface shimmered with an unnatural pallor, a sickly green light that pulsed faintly, as if breathing with a life of its own. Shadows flickered across the walls, cast by the Helm's eerie glow, and a low murmur seemed to emanate from it, barely audible, like voices carried on a distant wind. Captain Rourke stood before it, his eyes narrowing as he wrestled with the creeping dread settling into his bones. The last weeks had been an unrelenting storm of misfortune, but tonight felt different. The air aboard the Harbinger felt thick, as though charged with some invisible static that frayed nerves and gnawed at reason. The crew had grown restless, whispers spreading like wildfire in the close quarters. Dark visions haunted their waking hours and bled into restless dreams. Even Illyra, usually the unshakable navigator, had begun to falter. In the navigation room, Illyra's slender fingers trembled as she traced the flight paths on the worn charts. Outside the viewport, the airborne currents twisted and churned like living serpents, but it was the phantasmal images dancing just beyond the glass that held her gaze captive. Ghostly silhouettes of shattered skyships flickered and vanished, their spectral crews frozen in eternal torment. She swallowed hard, trying to focus, but the visions clawed at the edges of her mind, threatening to undo her. "Captain," she whispered hoarsely, "the Helm. It's showing me their fates. The lost fleets, the doomed voyagers, all marked by this curse." Rourke's jaw clenched. He had seen enough to know the Helm's malevolence was no mere superstition. It was a living curse, feeding on fear and doubt. Yet, to let the crew succumb to it was to doom them all. Meanwhile, in the engine room, a sharp exchange of words shattered the uneasy quiet. Gideon's burly frame loomed over Mira, his voice laced with bitterness and suspicion. "You're hiding something," Gideon accused, eyes blazing behind soot-streaked hands. "That helm's not just cursed, it's a beacon for trouble. And you, what are you really after?" Myra's pale face remained inscrutable, the shadows beneath her hood deepening. "Careful where you point your blame, Gideon," she said softly. "The curse feeds on distrust." Their argument spiraled, voices rising as the hum of the engines seemed to pulse in time with their mounting tension. Around them, the ship groaned and creaked, the wooden timbers straining against the restless currents. On deck, beneath the sky, starless and heavy with portent, Rourke gripped the helm with white-knuckled determination. The shadows at the edge of his vision flickered and danced, mocking specters conjured by the curse. He took a deep breath, his voice low but resolute. "This curse will not claim us," he declared, eyes scanning the gathered crew. "We are bound by more than fear. Trust in your shipmates, in yourselves. The ghost helm may haunt us, but it will not break us." A tense silence followed, the weight of his words settling like a fragile salve. Yet beneath the surface, the poison of paranoia had taken root. Eyes flicked side to side, silent accusations passing where words failed. The crew's unity, so vital to their survival, now hung by a thread. As the night deepened, visions grew more vivid, whispers more insistent. Dreams turned to nightmares, waking moments to suspicion. Rourke knew that the coming days would test not only their skill and courage, but the very bonds that held them together. He tightened his grip on the helm, feeling the chill seep into his bones. The curse was no longer just a legend. It was a living, breathing force, and it was closing in. "Hold fast," he murmured to himself, eyes fixed on the endless expanse of sky ahead. "We will see the dawn." But even as hope flickered, the shadows lengthened and the ghost helm's grip tightened, threatening to drag them all into darkness. The harrowing grip of the curse was only beginning. What price would they pay to break free? The answer lay hidden in the skies ahead, where trust and treachery danced in equal measure, and the true test of Captain Rourke's resolve was yet to come. The sky above the submerged world was a shifting tapestry of light and shadow as the Harbinger approached the edge of the floating forest. Captain Rourke stood at the helm, his weathered hands steady despite the knot of unease tightening in his chest. Before them lay a vast expanse of tangled vines and drifting leaves, a labyrinth of airborne foliage suspended by the restless currents that wove through the submerged islands below. "We're entering the floating forest," Naveen murmured, voice low as his sharp eyes scanned the canopy ahead. "The currents here are unpredictable. We'll need to be cautious." Elara adjusted the throttle, her fingers dancing over the worn controls. Cautious or not, this ship's ready to groan under any sudden strain. "I'll keep an eye on the engines, but if those vines catch us, we're in trouble." Myra remained cloaked in shadow near the rear deck, her green eyes flickering with an unreadable expression. "The forest is alive," she said softly, her voice carrying a strange resonance. "Not just with nature, but with old magic. The ghost helm's influence seeps into these leaves and branches." Rourke's jaw tightened. The helm lay secured below deck, its ancient presence a constant weight on everyone's minds. The stories of ships lost to the helm's curse were not just superstition here. They were warnings etched into every whispered legend. As the Harbinger slipped beneath the shimmering canopy, the world transformed. Leaves, pale and translucent, drifted lazily on the currents, catching the light in ethereal glows. Vines twisted around the ship's hull like living chains, swaying with an uncanny rhythm. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and something else, something faintly metallic and unsettling. "Steady," Rourke commanded, eyes narrowing. "Keep her slow, no sudden moves." The ship creaked under the strain as vines brushed and scraped against the wooden frames. Ilara's voice crackled over the comms. "Engines are holding, but I'm seeing spikes in the energy readings. This forest isn't just a tangle of plant sits feeding off us." Suddenly, a low hum filled the air, resonating through the timbers and into the crew's bones. Strange luminescent spores began to drift down like spectral snowflakes, their glow casting eerie shadows on the faces of the crew. Naveen's eyes darted nervously. "These spores, they're the heralds of the forest's curse," he whispered. "If they settle, they could poison the ship's systems and minds alike." Ilara cursed under her breath, wrench in hand as she rushed to the engine room. The hum grew louder, vibrating through the ship's core. The Harbinger shuddered, and Rourke gripped the helm tighter. "Brace yourselves," he shouted. The vines tightened, as if reacting to the helm's malevolent aura. Spectral shapes flickered between the branches, ghostly apparitions of sailors long lost to the forest's embrace. Their whispers slithered through the air, chilling the crew to the bone. Myra stepped forward, her voice rising above the haunting chorus. "The helm's curse calls to the forest's spirits. We must resist or be consumed." Rourke nodded, signaling to Ilara, "Keep those engines running." Navan, plot a course through the densest thicket. We'll punch through the heart of the forest and escape its grasp. The ship lurched as the vines snapped like whips, tearing at the sails and rigging. Crew members scrambled, shouting orders and battling the creeping menace. Ilara's hands were steady, but beads of sweat traced lines down her soot-smudged face. "I've got a breach in the starboard engine," she called out urgently. "If it fails, we'll stall." Rourke's gaze hardened. "Hold her together, we're almost through." The spectral whispers crescendoed into a roar, voices pleading, cursing, warning. Naveen's hands flew over the navigation charts, eyes searching for a safe passage. There, a gap in the currents. "If we can make it through, we'll clear the forest." A fierce gust caught the Harbinger, buffeting it against the swirling vines. The ship groaned and creaked, its timbers protesting the strain. Rourke barked orders, rallying the crew's resolve. Suddenly, a surge of corrupted magic pulsed from the helm below deck, sending a shockwave through the ship. Lanterns flickered, and a cold chill swept the decks. Crew members staggered, eyes wide with dread. "The helm's curse is trying to tear us apart from within." Mira cried out, moving swiftly to the helm's chamber. "We must contain it." Rourke took a deep breath, his mind a whirlwind of fear and determination. "We won't let it win, not today." With a mighty heave, the Harbinger burst through the final thicket of vines, emerging into open sky once more. The crew collapsed in exhaustion, breaths ragged but spirits unbroken. Ilara wiped her brow, her voice hoarse but triumphant. "We made it. But that wasn't natural. The helm's curse is stronger than ever." Rourke looked ahead, eyes steely, "and our journey is far from over." As the Harbinger sailed onward, the floating forest faded behind them, its tangled dangers a grim reminder of the perils yet to come. The ghostly whispers lingered in the air, a haunting promise that the curse would follow them to the very edge of the endless sky. "Prepare for whatever lies ahead," Rourke ordered, "because the ghost helm's grip tightens with every mile." The crew nodded, united in their resolve, as the Harbinger pressed forward into the unknown. And in the shadows, the cursed helm waited, its secrets far from revealed, its power far from spent. The endless sky beckoned, and the true trial was just beginning.